The heel of Elena's shoe caught the edge of the carpet, and the floor tilted under her before she could stop it. Champagne glasses shook on a nearby tray. A woman gasped somewhere behind her. Elena felt her whole body pitch forward, arms out, heart slamming once, hard, against her ribs. Then something solid stopped her fall. A man, tall, in a black suit, standing exactly where she needed him to stand, as if the room had been arranging this moment for the last hour. Her hands landed flat against his chest. His arm came around her back on pure instinct, catching her the way you catch a falling glass without thinking about it first. For 1 second, neither of them moved. The string quartet kept playing. The chandeliers kept glowing. But between them, everything had gone completely still. "I've got you," he said quietly. Elena looked up into a pair of calm gray eyes and forgot, for a moment, that she did not belong in this room at all. Her name was Elena Marchetti, and 3 hours earlier she had been standing in her cousin's kitchen borrowing a dress 2 sizes too big for a party she was never supposed to attend. Her cousin worked for the catering company hired to serve dinner at the Ashworth family's winter gala, and when one of the servers called out sick, Elena got handed an apron, a tray, and a warning. Do not speak to the guests. Do not make eye contact with the family. Just serve, smile, and disappear. She had done exactly that for 2 hours. She had carried trays past marble floors and oil paintings worth more than her mother's house. She had watched women in gowns that cost more than a year of her rent laugh about vacations she would never take. She had kept her head down, her tray steady, and her mouth shut. Then her cousin asked her to deliver 1 more tray to the ballroom, just this once, in a borrowed dress instead of an apron, because the family wanted extra hands mixing with the guests for the toast. And that was how Elena Marchetti, daughter of a woman who cleaned houses much like this one, ended up standing in the middle of the Ashworth ballroom in shoes she did not trust, falling into the arms of a stranger who caught her like it was nothing at all. "Thank you," she said, straightening up fast, pulling away before anyone could see her face turn red. "You're shaking," the man said, not asking, just noticing. "I'm fine. You fell into a person, not a couch. It's allowed to rattle you a little." Despite herself, Elena almost laughed. "Are you always this calm when strangers fall on you?" "You're the first," he said. "I'm improvising." Up close, she could see he was younger than she expected, maybe 30, with the kind of face people described as classically handsome without meaning to sound like a greeting card. But it wasn't his face that caught her attention. It was the way he was looking at her, like she was the only person in a room full of 300 guests. "I should go," Elena said. "I'm not exactly a guest here." "No? I'm the catering," she said, gesturing vaguely at her dress, as if that explained everything. "You fell very elegantly for catering." "I fall elegantly for a lot of things. It's a skill." He smiled at that, a real smile, not the practiced kind she had watched everyone else in this room perform all night. "Julian," he said, holding out his hand. She hesitated only a second before taking it. "Elena." Neither of them let go right away. It was an older woman's voice that finally broke the moment, cutting clean through the music like a blade through silk. "Well," the voice said, "isn't that interesting?" Elena turned to find a woman in her 70s, silver hair pinned in a style that looked expensive even from across the room, sitting in a high-backed chair near the fireplace with a glass of wine balanced in one hand. Her eyes moved from Elena to Julian and back again, sharp and unreadable. "Grandmother," Julian said, his voice suddenly careful. "This is Elena." "I can see that," the woman said. "I can also see you're still holding her hand." Julian let go so fast, Elena almost laughed again, except something in the old woman's expression made the air feel different. Heavier, like a held breath before a decision. "Genevieve Ashworth," the woman said, extending a hand toward Elena, who shook it, unsure what else to do. "And you are the young woman who just fell into my grandson's arms in front of half the city's oldest families." "I tripped," Elena said. "It wasn't planned." "Nothing interesting ever is," Genevieve said, and something in her tone made Elena's stomach tighten. Dinner had not even reached dessert when Genevieve Ashworth rose from her seat, glass in hand, and tapped a small silver spoon against the crystal. The room quieted the way rooms only quiet for people who have never once had to raise their voice to be heard. "I have an announcement," Genevieve said. Elena, standing near the back of the room with an empty tray still in her hands, felt her pulse pick up before she even understood why. "My grandson Julian," Genevieve continued, "has found himself an engagement tonight, to the lovely young woman who caught his eye earlier this evening." For one horrible, frozen second, Elena thought the woman meant someone else. Some other lovely young woman standing somewhere in this crowd of 300 people who actually belonged here. Then Genevieve's eyes found her across the room, and Elena understood with total, sinking clarity that there was no other woman. The room erupted into applause and clinking glasses and delighted murmurs, and through all of it, Elena stood frozen with a tray in her hands, and her heart pounding somewhere near her throat, staring at Julian, who looked exactly as blindsided as she felt. His mouth opened. No sound came out. Genevieve raised her glass higher. "To Julian and Elena," she said, "may their engagement be everything this family needs it to be." Elena set the tray down on the nearest table before her hands could shake it loose, turned, and walked straight for the nearest exit, her borrowed dress swishing around her ankles like it was trying to keep up with her fury. She made it as far as the coat room before a hand caught the door behind her. "Wait," Julian said, following her in. "Please." "Your grandmother just announced our engagement," Elena said, spinning to face him. "To a room full of people, based on one conversation that lasted 4 minutes. I know." "You know? That's it? You know?" "I'm trying to figure out what to say that doesn't sound insane," Julian said, running a hand through his hair. "Because right now the truthful version is, my grandmother does this. She decides things and then makes them true by saying them out loud in front of enough witnesses. That's not how engagements work." "No," Julian agreed. "It's not. It's how my grandmother works." Elena grabbed her coat off the rack, hands trembling now with something closer to anger than fear. "I don't know your family. I don't know you. I fell into your arms 20 minutes ago because I tripped on a rug, and now I'm apparently engaged to you in front of everyone who matters in this city." "I understand if you want to leave," Julian said quietly. "I would too, in your position." Something about the honesty in his voice made Elena pause with her coat half on. That was when Genevieve appeared in the doorway, unhurried, as if she had known exactly where to find them. "Before you go," Genevieve said to Elena, "you should know why I did what I did. It isn't romance, dear. I'm not that sentimental. It's a will." "A will," Elena repeated. "My husband's will," Genevieve said. "It states that Julian must be engaged before the new year or the family estate passes to his cousin Marcus, a man who would sell this family's name to the first bidder with a checkbook. I have exactly one grandson willing to inherit responsibility instead of running from it, and exactly no time left to arrange things properly." "So you picked a stranger," Elena said, "out of a crowd." "I picked the woman my grandson was still holding hands with, 3 minutes after meeting her," Genevieve said. "That's not nothing, whatever you think of me." Elena felt her anger tangle with something else, something she didn't have a name for yet. "I have a life," she said. "A job. A mother in the hospital with bills I can't pay. I don't have time to play pretend fiancé for your family's inheritance games." Genevieve's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened. "A mother in the hospital," she repeated. "What kind of bills, exactly?" "The kind that don't go away because I'm tired of them," Elena said. "What if I told you," Genevieve said slowly, "that 3 months of your time, spent pretending to be engaged to my grandson until this estate business resolves itself, would be worth more than you could earn in 5 years of catering other people's parties?" Elena went very still. "I'm not asking you to marry him," Genevieve said. "I'm asking you to wear a ring, attend some family dinners, and let an old woman keep a promise to a husband who's been dead 11 years. After the new year, you walk away with a settlement, large enough to clear every bill your mother has, and then some. No strings. No further obligation. Elena looked at Julian, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't read, something between apology and hope. "This is insane," Elena said. "Most good decisions look insane right before you make them," Genevieve said. "Take the night to think, dear, but not too long. The will doesn't wait for anyone's comfort." She left the coat room the way she had entered it, unhurried, certain, like a woman who had never once doubted how a conversation would end. Elena stood there with her coat half on, staring at Julian. "You don't have to say yes," Julian said. "Whatever she offered you, I'll make sure you get help another way if you need it. This isn't fair to ask of a stranger." "You'd do that, even if I said no to the engagement?" "Yes," Julian said, and something in the simplicity of his answer made Elena believe him completely. She thought of her mother's hospital bed, the stack of bills she hid in a kitchen drawer so she wouldn't have to look at them every day, the 2 jobs she was already working just to keep from drowning. She thought about how, 20 minutes ago, a stranger had caught her without hesitation, like it was the easiest thing in the world. 3 months, Elena said finally. "That's all. And no falling for you for real. I mean it." Julian almost smiled. "Understood," he said. "No falling." Neither of them noticed, in that moment, how much of a lie that promise already was. The agreement was simple on paper. 3 months of appearances, family dinners, a handful of public events, a story about how they met that sounded far more romantic than a spilled tray and a lucky catch. In exchange, a settlement large enough to clear Elena's mother's medical debt entirely, transferred quietly, without conditions, the moment the estate passed safely into Julian's name after the new year. What the paper didn't account for was how quickly pretending started to feel like something else. Julian showed up the following week at the hospital, unannounced, holding a small potted plant because he said flowers died too fast and he liked things that stayed around a while. Elena's mother, propped up in her bed with tubes in her arm, looked at him for a long moment and then looked at Elena with an expression that said more than words could. "He's polite," her mother said later, once Julian had stepped out to find coffee. "Rich men aren't usually polite to nurses." "He's not really my fiancé, Mom," Elena reminded her, though the words felt strange in her mouth by then. "It's temporary." Her mother said, unconvinced, watching the door Julian had disappeared through. Over the following weeks, Elena learned the unspoken rules of Julian's world, the way you learn a language you never asked to speak, which fork to use for which course, which cousin to avoid at family dinners, and why, how to smile at Aunt Priscilla's pointed questions about her background without giving away anything that mattered. Julian, in turn, learned things from Elena he clearly hadn't expected to learn, how to laugh at himself before someone else could do it for him, how to eat dessert before dinner, just once, because rules that don't matter shouldn't be followed out of habit, how to sit quietly next to someone without needing to fill the silence with something impressive. It happened slowly, the way most true things do. A shared umbrella during a sudden downpour outside a restaurant, standing closer than strangers should. An argument over whether the family's towering, professionally decorated Christmas tree needed a single homemade ornament, which ended, somehow, with both of them laughing so hard Elena had to sit down. Genevieve watched all of it from doorways and hallway corners, saying nothing, her expression unreadable except for the small, satisfied curve at the corner of her mouth that Elena caught more than once and chose to ignore. "You look at her when she isn't watching," Genevieve told Julian one evening, catching him alone in the study. "I look at everyone," Julian said. "You don't," Genevieve said. "Not like that." Julian didn't answer, because there wasn't an answer that wouldn't have been a confession. Meanwhile, the estate's deadline crept closer, and with it came Marcus, Julian's cousin, a man with an easy smile and eyes that never quite matched it. Marcus had wanted the estate for years, had assumed it would eventually fall to him by default, since Julian showed no signs of settling down. The The sudden engagement had cost him that assumption, and he wasn't the type of man to lose gracefully. "Convenient timing," Marcus said to Julian one night at a family dinner, swirling wine in his glass. "A fiancé appearing right when the will requires one." "Some things are convenient because they're right," Julian said evenly. "Or convenient because they're arranged," Marcus said, glancing at Elena with a look that made her skin prickle. "Where did you say you two met again?" "I didn't," Elena said, meeting his gaze without flinching, though her heart was pounding. "Some things aren't anyone else's business." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes, and Elena understood with a cold certainty that he intended to find out the truth one way or another. That night, walking Elena to her car, Julian was quiet for a long time before speaking. "He'll try to prove it's fake," Julian said. "Marcus, he won't stop until he finds a crack." "Then we don't give him one," Elena said. Julian stopped walking and turned to face her under the porch light, and for a moment, neither of them said anything at all. "Elena," he said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to know I'm not saying it because of the will, or my grandmother, or any of this arrangement." Her breath caught somewhere in her chest. "I think I stopped pretending a while ago," Julian said quietly. "I don't know exactly when, but somewhere between the umbrella and the Christmas tree argument, this became less of a performance and more of a—" His phone rang, cutting through the moment like a blade. Elena watched his expression change as he answered, watched the color drain slightly from his face. "What happened?" he said into the phone, already reaching for his keys. Elena's stomach dropped before he even said the words. "It's your mother," Julian said, already moving toward his car. "The hospital called. We need to go now." The next several hours blurred into fluorescent lights and vinyl waiting room chairs and the particular, terrible quiet of hospital corridors at night. Elena sat with her knees pulled to her chest, watching doctors move past without meeting her eyes, each one a small failure to reassure her. Julian never left. He sat beside her for 6 straight hours, not performing comfort, not filling silence with empty words, just present, solid, there. When a nurse brought coffee, he handed his cup to Elena without being asked. When Elena's hands wouldn't stop shaking, he simply took one of them and held it, saying nothing, asking nothing in return. It should have felt like relief. Instead, somewhere around hour 5, exhaustion cracked something open in Elena that she hadn't meant to let out. "Why are you even here?" she said, voice raw, eyes fixed on the corridor floor. "This isn't part of the arrangement. There's no audience, no family watching, no reason for you to sit here all night pretending to care." Julian went very still beside her. "I'm not pretending." "Aren't you?" Elena said, and she could hear the unfairness in her own words even as she said them, could hear the fear underneath the anger, but couldn't stop it from coming out anyway. "This whole thing started because your grandmother needed a prop for a will. Maybe you're just very good at playing your part, Julian. Maybe that's all any of this ever was." The words landed and stayed there, ugly and unretractable, hanging in the space between them. Julian didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He simply stood, quiet, wounded in a way Elena could see even through her own exhaustion, and said, "I should let you have some space," before walking down the corridor and out of sight. Elena sat alone after that, staring at the ring on her finger, an engagement that was never supposed to mean anything, wondering why her chest ached like it did. 2 days later, Marcus made his move. He arrived at the family lawyer's office with a folder of what he called evidence, receipts and text messages, and a private investigator's report suggesting the engagement between Julian and Elena had begun as a transaction rather than a romance. He requested the will be reviewed, the estate frozen, the entire arrangement declared void on the grounds of fraud. Genevieve, informed of this development over breakfast, set down her coffee cup with a click that could be heard across the room. "Marcus has never once understood," she said quietly, "that some things start as arrangements and become something else entirely. He assumes because it began as one thing, it must remain that thing forever. That's the failure of a man who has never let anything change him. She found Julian in the study that evening, standing by the window with an expression she hadn't seen on him since he was a boy, who had just lost something and hadn't yet understood how much. "You look like a man who's misplaced something important," Genevieve said. "I said something wrong," Julian said, "or she did. I don't know which of us started it, but I know I left when I should have stayed." "Then go back," Genevieve said simply. "She thinks I was performing," Julian said. "That night in the hospital, she thinks none of it was real." "Was it?" Julian turned to look at his grandmother, and for the first time in the entire arrangement, he answered without hesitation. "It was the realest thing I've had in years." "Then that's what you tell her," Genevieve said. "Not me, her." Elena sat alone in the hospital corridor the following morning, her mother finally stable, sleeping peacefully down the hall, and stared at the ring on her hand that she had forgotten to take off. She thought about walking away clean. The settlement, she knew, was already secured. Genevieve had made certain of that days earlier, quietly, with no conditions attached regardless of how the engagement ended. Elena could leave tonight and her mother's bills would still disappear. There was no practical reason left to stay. And yet, she thought of an umbrella shared in the rain, a ridiculous argument about a Christmas tree that ended in helpless laughter, a hand that had held hers through 6 hours of fluorescent lights without once asking for anything in return. She thought of the words she had said in anger, words she didn't fully believe even as she said them, and the way Julian's face had looked when he walked away. New Year's Eve arrived with the entire Ashworth family gathered in the same ballroom where it had all begun. The same chandeliers, the same string quartet, the same borrowed sense that Elena did not quite belong here, except this time she walked in wearing a dress that was actually hers, bought with her own money, chosen because she liked it, and not because someone handed it to her. Marcus made his accusation loudly, publicly, laying his folder of evidence on a table in front of the assembled family, demanding the engagement be declared a fraud, the will voided, the estate reassigned. The room went quiet, the way it had the night Genevieve first made her announcement. Julian stood. "He's right," Julian said, and a ripple of shock moved through the room. "It started exactly the way he says, a rescue, an arrangement, a woman my grandmother pulled into a crisis she never asked to be part of." Marcus's smile widened, certain of victory. "But somewhere along the way," Julian continued, "it stopped being that. I don't know the exact moment. Maybe it was an umbrella in the rain. Maybe it was an argument about a Christmas tree that made me laugh harder than I had in years. Maybe it was a hospital corridor where a woman who owed me nothing sat next to a woman she'd just met and held my hand like it was the easiest, most natural thing in the world. I said things wrong. I let fear win one night when I should have stayed, but I'm not standing here to defend a fraud, Marcus. I'm standing here because for the first time in my life, I want something without being told to want it, and her name is Elena." From the doorway, having just arrived from the hospital, Elena heard the last of it, her heart pounding somewhere near her throat. She could still walk away. Nothing was holding her here except herself. She didn't walk away. She crossed the room instead, past the stunned faces of relatives who had spent months assuming they understood exactly what this engagement was, and stopped in front of Julian, close enough to see the hope and fear tangled together in his expression. "I said something cruel in that hospital," Elena said. "I meant the fear behind it, not the words themselves." "I know," Julian said quietly. "I'm still angry you left. I know that too. And I'm still terrified this is the kind of thing that only works in stories," Elena said. "Not in real life, not for someone like me." "Then let's find out together," Julian said, "whether it's real." Marcus, still standing there with his folder of evidence, useless now, against a room full of witnesses who had just watched something far more convincing than any paperwork, quietly closed the file and walked out without another word. Genevieve raised her glass from across the room, and this time she made no announcement at all. She simply watched, satisfied, as her grandson and the young woman who had tripped into his arms months earlier found each other again, except this time neither of them was falling by accident. Later that night, long after the family had scattered into celebration and the string quartet had packed away their instruments, Elena and Julian found themselves standing in the same small coat room where it had all truly begun. Empty now, quiet, holding nothing but a rack of borrowed coats and the memory of two strangers who had once stood exactly here, arguing about a will neither of them had asked to be part of. "We should probably stop meeting in coat rooms," Elena said. "I don't know," Julian said, taking her hand. "This one's been good to us." Outside, fireworks began to light up the sky over the estate, marking the new year, marking the end of a deadline that no longer mattered to either of them, marking, though neither said it aloud, the actual beginning of everything that came after. Elena's mother, recovering steadily in a hospital that no longer sent letters about unpaid bills, would later tell anyone who asked that she knew from the very first visit, the one where a rich man showed up with a potted plant because flowers died too fast, that this particular engagement was never going to end the way it started. She was right, and somewhere in that quiet coat room, long after midnight, two people who had begun as a rescue and an arrangement stood holding hands, no longer performing anything for anyone, simply choosing, freely and completely, to stay.